It was on one occasion when I was standing beside the guest of the evening. I'd never met him before, and I asked him what he did, as is common. And he said, well, he was a biochemist and led a very big unit in biochemistry. And he said, and what about you? Well, I said, I'm afraid I'm a pure mathematician. His reply to that was, how awfully boring. And I could see he meant it. So I just said, well, I said, okay, I know my subject is socially not perhaps the most acceptable. So I tried to make up for that by being interested in the big questions. He said, what big questions? Very suspicious. I said, big questions like, what is the status of the universe? Is it created or not? Or, what is the status of human life? Is it made in the image of God or not? Oh, he said, it's far worse than I thought. He said, listen, I'm an atheist. I'm a reductionist. We have nothing to talk about, and we're going to have the most miserable evening. Good start for a dinner party. So I said, really? You're a reductionist? I said, that's very interesting to me. He said, is it? I said, yes. I said, I know at least 3 different kinds of reductionism. Which kind are you? Well, he said, I don't know what name you would put on it, but I take a big problem, I divide it into little problems, I study them and hope to get insight on the big problems. I said, well, I do that too. Both of us are methodological reductionists. So I said, we have something to talk about. Oh, but he said, I don't really mean that. I said, I know you don't. You are an ontological reductionist. From the Greek word ontos, meaning being. You think that everything can be reduced to physics and chemistry, and therefore you think that produces atheism. He said exactly, and therefore we have nothing to talk about. Well, so I said, oh, well, that's really fascinating. Why don't we do an experiment? He said, at the dinner table. I said, yes, this is Oxford. So he said, what's the experiment? Well, I said, have a look at this. So I picked up the menu. It wasn't very inspiring. It wasn't even in French. It said roast chicken. Pollo, you know. So he said, it says roast chicken. I said, how do you know? Well, he says it. But I said, those are just marks on paper. Oh, he said, but look, that's a language, it's English. Oh, I said, that's interesting. You're a reductionist, yes. Everything can be explained only in terms of physics and chemistry, yes. So I said, here's the problem. Not for me, but for you. You explain to me the semiotics of those marks, R, O, A, S, T, using only the physics and chemistry of the paper and ink. There was dead silence. The silence was broken by his wife. And she said, rather too loudly, get out of that if you can. He didn't try. He said something so honest that I've never forgotten it, although I've heard it from other people. He said, I can't do it. What's more, he said, it cannot be done. And he says, you know, I have gone into my laboratory every day for the last 40 years thinking it could be done. I was staggered. So I said, just wait a minute. Physics and chemistry have only been going properly for 500 or 600 years. He said, it doesn't matter. It's not within the explanatory power of physics and chemistry to cope with language and meaning. And he looked at me for a long time and then he said, "Where did you get that argument?" He could see I wasn't bright enough to think of it myself. And of course, that's perfectly true. So I said, "I got it from a Nobel Prize winner." "Oh," he said, "what a relief." But then I pushed it. R-O-A-S-T. How many letters is that? 5? Because you see, he studied DNA. He works on the longest word that has ever been discovered. The genetic code. 3.5 billion letters in exactly the right order. So I said, as you look at that, tell me about it. What's its ultimate origin? Oh, he said, chance and necessity, chance and the laws of nature. I said, do you really believe that? Because you've just looked at 5 letters and you have immediately concluded that there's a mind behind it. Now, a number of automatic processes went into producing that menu. But because there's a semiotic dimension, signs carrying meaning, you have concluded that somewhere in the background there is an intelligence. Why don't you do the same for a word that's 3.5 billion letters long? Why don't they, ladies and gentlemen?